my screen. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. We're just going to be getting started. Just give us another minute. Just another minute, and then we're going to get started. Okay, and people are still coming on right now. So we'll just take probably another minute.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know when we get the final number on, or?
When the number stops increasing.
Oh, okay, okay, oops. Okay, and people are still signing on. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, too. Okay, and I guess we'll start just about 5:35. So. Someone actually just asked me a question that I can answer now. They wanted to know how I was feeling. And I'm feeling really good. So thank you for asking. And like I said, we're going through the 3rd week right now, and I have 1 more week to go. So, but feeling good. Can't wait to tell the story when I'm all finished. We could start. Okay. So am I unmuted? Yep. Okay. Okay, so I guess we're going to get started, everybody. We have a good amount of people on, but I have to tell you, I'm so honored to have you all here tonight. I really wish we could be together in person because we have some phenomenal speakers, but the virtual format is allowing us to host our largest women's networking event to date. Tonight, we're going to have over 200 women participating. Before we begin, I've added an electronic program to my website for this event. If you'd like more information on the speakers or some sheets to take notes, visit serino.nysenate.gov. That's serino.nysenate.gov and click on events. The program is under the event for today. I launched my series of women's networking events back in 2018, and I know some of you that are on today have been with us since day 1, and this was a way to help connect women here in our community to one another, but also as a way to really show people that there is no one way to get involved in our community. Throughout my life, but especially since taking office, I've been inspired by so many women here in our community and beyond. They've taught me just how invaluable it is to have a network that you can count on. And these events are about creating opportunities for local women to come together and build connections. And that's what this evening is all about. You know, when I first was elected to the state Senate, I was in absolute shock. Originally they called me the accidental senator. I was somebody that never really liked politics, and it wasn't until my life was affected, my owning a business, that I started to get involved. But I was also someone, when I did get elected, Albany did not want me telling my story, because I started work at the age of 15. and to help my mom. And by my senior year, I was somebody that was on the honor roll, but I wasn't going to gym, and I was working 40, sometimes 50 hours a week. So I did not graduate. I ended up getting my GED that summer. Albany had told me they didn't want me telling that story, but I have to tell you, after my first year, I did tell my story. I started when I was at the Chamber of Commerce, had the workforce development at Poughkeepsie City High School, and I wanted to tell kids, like if I could do it, anybody could do it. And then I was asked to be a guest speaker at Hudson Valley Magazine. And I know some of you that are on today were there at that meeting, and I told my story, and it was great. I had a mom come up to me with her daughter, and the mom had tears in her eyes. She said, my daughter got her GED, and she was embarrassed by it, like I was for oh gosh, probably over 20 years. And she said it really made their day. And so just inspiring one person like that, it was amazing. And I always say, like, our personal stories propel us forward. I was a single mom living paycheck to paycheck. And finally, I found my niche in real estate. And I got frustrated, like I said, when we built up our building in Hyde Park. And then I had to go through all these different protocols for planning and zoning. And it was so frustrating that I said, the only way I'm going to make a change is by getting involved. And I was on the town board, then the legislature, and then now the state senate. But I also remember when I first got to Albany, I remember thinking, what did I just do? Because everybody seemed so different than me, and they seemed to be playing by some unwritten set of rules. At the time, I was only one of 15 women elected to serve in the state senate, and I was definitely experiencing culture shock. And I knew that I knew I was there for the right reasons. On my first day, it was great. I was walking down the hallway, and a woman approached me, who I later learned was Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson, and she gave me a huge shout out and said, finally, another woman. And I instantly knew what she meant. It didn't matter what side of the aisle we sit on. Women know how to get things done, and we come together to accomplish something. We are a real force to be reckoned with. And that's what tonight is all about. I've asked our amazing speakers to share their personal stories with you and to specifically address the theme of adapting in a time of change, because this unprecedented time has also come with unprecedented changes for each and every one of us. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was diagnosed with an early form of breast cancer and am currently undergoing radiation treatments. And you want to talk about a change I was totally unprepared for. So this is certainly not a chapter I ever planned to write in my personal story, but has forced me to adapt and adjust in ways I never imagined. Women are resilient, and I think it's in our DNA. When we adapt and evolve, we can overcome more than we ever expect to. That's a lesson I'm still learning every day, and one I know each of our speakers will reinforce. So with that, I'll turn it over to our speakers, each of whom will present, and then we'll open it up at the end, and you can submit any questions you might have for our speakers here today. First up, I'm thrilled to be able to introduce founder and executive director of Sparrow's Nest, my friend and my 2020 New York State Woman of Distinction nominee, Krista Jones. Welcome, Krista.
Hello, everyone. How are you? First, I want to say I'm so honored to be here. I think it's absolutely amazing that I am on a panel with these distinguished women, and I can't wait to hear their stories as well. And you said it so amazingly well, that as women, we are here to empower each other, and we can do such great things. I am the executive director and the founder of a charity called Sparrow's Nest. And that charity started years and years ago while I was a DJ on a morning show. I was a news director and DJ on 92.1 here in the Hudson Valley. And I was watching all of this amazing stuff happen, and we were doing contests and giving away things and making people smile and making people happy. And I'm like, wow, like I want to do more of that. And I had a friend right after I had my babies that had her own babies. They were all the same age. So we had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And we did a lot of great stuff together. And I was at a wedding one day and she called me and she said, hey, I need you to get over to the house. Something's not right. I have to take an ambulance. I don't feel good. My husband and I need somebody to watch the kids. So I sent my husband over because I was working, and we didn't know what was going on. And 14 hours later, I get a call at like 3 a.m. from her saying, I have stage 4 colon cancer. And I thought, I don't even know what stages are. I had not known anyone that was sick. I was lucky enough that I didn't really have cancer that close in my life. So I didn't even understand what it all meant. And what I noticed as I watched Kathy fight her battle, she was 38 years old when she was diagnosed. So colon cancer really isn't something, number one, for women or for women under the age of 50. It's rarer. And as I watched her battle this horrible, ugly disease, I couldn't just sit there. So I started making her food. It's not like I reinvented the wheel. Everybody does it. But I noticed that she was getting food from everywhere because, right, we're women, we're nurturers, we want to help you. So that was amazing, but she was exhausted and we didn't know where the food was coming from. And she wasn't sure if she could eat the food. And after months of this, I finally just went home to my husband. I said, we're building a kitchen on the back of our home and we're going to feed people that are sick. And we're going to take out my 401k to do it. I know if you're listening to me right now and you're in finance, you should have stopped me then, but that's okay. So we built this kitchen onto the back of our home. We started feeding 12 people, and today we feed over 350 people a week. But the changes that I had to go through to even get here were completely crazy, right? I was a DJ on a morning show, and that's what I did. I'm not a distinguished chef. I cook for my 3 children. I like making macaroni and cheese, and I just had this passion, and I feel in your life, you have the opportunity to be or do anything you want, no matter what anybody says. And you really should go for whatever your passion is. And I just kept being drawn to this. So eventually quit my job, started doing this full time. And, we were doing really well. We moved out of my home into an actual establishment in Wappinger Falls. We went from 1 county to 2 county to 5 counties. We feed anyone that has children in the home, 18 or under, any type of cancer in a 35-mile radius. And that's great. And it's wonderful. And then COVID hit. And then everything changed because, when your company or you yourself goes through a crisis, right, we have to react immediately to change. We have to figure things out, especially with something like COVID and many of our businesses and our homes and our children being home from school. And, that's what was happening. The world completely stopped the week of March the 15th, and we couldn't. So now I went from 45 volunteers on Tuesday delivering food and over a dozen cooks to no one. We were hearing asymptomatic. You could actually have a fever. I've got people with compromised immune systems. So I'm hearing, it can live on trays of food for up to 9 days. In those first few weeks, we were all frightened. We didn't know what was going on. So as the information was coming in and I was trying to process all of it, I knew that we had to change, and we had to change quickly, and we had to adapt quickly. And the best advice that I can give, not just during a pandemic, but any time of your life where you need to make changes, is that you need to do so with a growth mindset. Your mindset while you're making changes is everything. The way that you talk as you're making these changes is everything. Listen, whether you own your own company or you're an employee or you're CEO of your household, the words that you speak are heard by others. The posts that you put on social media are seen by others. And so in the middle of all of this, we had to change everything. It was just 3 of us cooking. and 6 of us now delivering, which is like 10% of our volunteer force. We had to call farmers and ask if they would donate land because we knew we were going to lose charitable donations. It's one of the first places that, you know, is going to suffer because obviously people need to take care of their homes and their businesses. So we developed plans so that we would help our small restaurants to get them going and kind of keep them going through the first month. We talked to our farmers about growing vegetables for us because I knew, and we are losing $20,000, $30,000 every single month. I knew that now our expenses, right, are still the same. So we have to do something to cut that, but we still need to bring in income. Our events, as these ladies will also tell you, are next to nothing. We had to change that around. We had to figure out virtually how to make all these events work. Our 80s night was scheduled with 400 people, and the night before March, I think it was 13th or 14th, we had to completely pull the plug. So listen, I absolutely was scared. I'm not going to tell you that when you're going through a change, especially one that's out of your control, that you don't owe it to yourself to take a minute and go, oh my goodness. But one thing I swore I would never do is let my employees know. I didn't want my donors to know, and I didn't want my recipients to know. I wanted to breathe hope into not only all of those groups, but even my own children as a mom, because you are being heard everywhere you go, in the grocery store, when you're on the phone and your child is sitting there listening to you and just wants to know if they're going to have school or be with their friends. I had one that graduated this year. Every single thing that you do, there has to be a positive mindset. Even if you don't like the change, right? You have to learn how to cope with the change. So it's not going to do you or anyone else any good for you to talk negatively. So I would say that through COVID and everything else, I've made plenty of mistakes. I think we all do. But times like this, we really need to focus on the positive. For me, the whole world stopped, right? So I was eating dinner at home with my kids. I learned that my 9th grader found this boy, Joe, really, really cute. She's probably listening right now. She's going to be really mad. We rode bikes. I wouldn't let them on their phone from 12 to 8. I tried to connect more with the family. You know, it's how we handle these changes that define our entire environment. It really does. And it then rubs off on other people. And if you want to have a peaceful place in the workforce, if you want to have a non-chaotic home, it is really important that you breathe positive words into your environment. I can't even stress that enough. And you know, hope is important because it makes the present moment seem a little more bearable. And it is important because it lets us know that tomorrow can be even better than today. And probably most importantly, it is the greatest gift that you can give someone else because people look at you, especially when you're in leadership roles. And we all serve a leader in somewhere in our lives. People are looking at that. And people right now in the middle of such distress and such separation and just such ugliness are craving unity, and they're craving positive unity. And you know, we are the ones that can do that, just one small word at a time. So that's basically my story and kind of how I got here. And, you know, I'm just hoping that whatever you're going through, and I hope it speaks to someone, I just want you to know that change is absolutely scary at times. But, you know, there are many times that we can't control it. And if we can't control it, let's do the best we can to get through it as positively as we can.
Thank you so much, Krista. And you know, you're so right. Like, people just want to have hope. And I think your contagious smile and your kindness and respect give a lot of people that. And now I am so proud to turn it over to a woman whose resume leaves me in awe every time I take a look at it. Senior Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement and Chief Diversity Office of Westchester Medical Center, my friend, Mecca Santana Mitchell. Welcome, Mecca. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, of course. There are some people, when you get a call, you always respond. I am so happy because Senator Sue Serino is one of those people. And this is one of those events that I will make time for because it is so important. And I think the opportunity for us to get together and, as Krista said, sharing stories, becoming a storyteller, I think is compelling, it's authentic. Stories can motivate. They can set inspiration for others. They can set aspirational goals for where people want to be. And I think so much of today's conversation from both the presenters on the panel today is about change and the importance of understanding change is part of the process. It can be painful, it can be neutral, but it is what it is. And so I think so much of life is about equipping yourself with tools and skills and what I'll talk about, which is this sense of purpose that will guide you through that inevitable change so that you can thrive and be successful and be an inspiration for others. And so, you know, I'm just so happy to be here to participate, if only virtually at this time. I often like doing these in person because it's that fellowship that you get from being around other strong, dynamic women that really is so important. And it's not often that we participate in events that really inspire and empower us and educate us and leave us with both personal and professional fulfillment, but that's what this event is all about. You know, we take time to celebrate womanhood and leadership, but I think it's also important that we take time to reflect on the challenges that exist. And as we heard, the challenges aren't just the normal challenges for women like, you know, harassment in the workplace and pay equity. There are challenges like COVID. There are challenges like the current social unrest. You know, I tell so many people, if COVID turned the world upside down, then the current social unrest is really turning the world inside out. And people are reeling, and especially for those vulnerable pockets, those people who don't have a steady footing, this can be a very tumultuous time. So I think anything we can do to lend some calm and bring some calm to that storm by offering some words of guidance, words of advice, words of wisdom, I think that's our responsibility to do so, because again, those challenges aren't going away, and we don't want to become comfortable. We don't want to become complacent. That really becomes dangerous, especially for women, for issues that matter to us, to our mothers, to our daughters, to our sisters. I think we all have an obligation to stand up and step up and speak out. We have an obligation to be those champions and those advocates, just like Sue. I mean, you are the consummate champion for issues that matter, whether it's human trafficking or other issues that impact women in particular. You know, it's exceptional women like yourself who not only lead the way, but you also create space for other women to contribute like you've done with this event. And so I thank you for creating this space for us to share and contribute in a way that hopefully will give back to others. And when we're doing that, when we're having that fellowship with like-minded women, I tell people, I hope you come away with some, you know, answers today, hopefully some pearls of wisdom that we can share. But we also want people to come away with questions, right? At the end of the day, we want people to say to themselves, you know, what is it I can do? What's the contribution I can make? What am I prepared to challenge? What systems am I prepared to disrupt or dismantle? When am I prepared to stand up and speak out against injustice, even if not injustice directed towards me, but directed towards my fellow man or woman? And how am I prepared to help guide or participate in someone else's success, just like we have been successful? And that's what I think, like I said, events like this are all about. You know, I heard the saying once, empowered women empower women. And it's true. You know, when we're empowered and we're in these positions to make a change, it's our obligation to do so in whatever way you can. So now that I've said that, I guess I want to focus a little bit about what I was what we said we were going to talk about today. And it's nice because these conversations kind of go where they go. But I wanted to focus my comments again on the nonlinear nature of career and how finding your calling, your purpose, your passion, how that can help guide you and help you to be agile during the ebbs and flows of career and life. because we've all been there. Like you heard Krista, you know, life is kind of chugging along and everything's fine, and then you get hit with something completely unexpected. I tell people during one of the highest parts of my professional career, I was at the top of my game, my marriage exploded in spectacular fashion, and I was not expecting it, and yet it happened nonetheless. And so people would say to me, and this was years ago, you know, Mecca, I don't know how you do it. I'd be curled up in a ball, crying somewhere in a corner. And I said, here's the reality. Life and the world doesn't stop spinning on its axis, even for me, right? It won't. Bills have to be paid. My children have needs. I've got a professional career that I've invested a lot of time, energy, and education in. And so I'll survive. You know, I have no doubt that I'll come out on the other end, and hopefully I'll be stronger and I'll be better, and I'll be more resilient. And that's exactly what happens. Life will do what it does. It's our job to help prepare ourselves for the inevitable. And so I tell people, you know, before, when you think about your career, especially young women who I mentor, before you can talk about finding your passion professionally, you really do need to have some semblance of what your values are in your personal life. You have to have some sense of what we like to call here at my organization, your true north. This is your guiding star. This is ultimately what you're driven by. This is what you're standing for. These are your principles, again, your passion, your purpose. This is really what dictates the core of who you are every day, all day, as a human being in this world. And for me, I tell people my intention in this world, and the way that I maneuver in this world, is that I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate in my personal life. I'm an advocate in my professional life. And that true north has guided me and caused me to have great success in both spaces. I like fighting for people who need it. I like fighting for causes that are worth a good fight. I like being a voice for the voiceless. I like standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's what I do. You know, I'm a principled person fueled by my conviction in the power of advocacy for others. And I can tell you candidly that that realization didn't come easy for me, and it didn't come early in my career. I wish it had. You know, for those who don't know about my background, I started my career as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan. So I was in the criminal justice realm, trying cases. I was a sex crimes prosecutor, a violent crimes prosecutor, you know, domestic violence cases. And what I didn't realize at the time is more important than being a lawyer. What I was an advocate for victims. I was an advocate for, you know, children who were being abused. I was an advocate for rape victims who needed someone to hold their hand and walk them through the process. And that's really what I was. I then went on to oversee the Civil Rights Office for the New York City Department of Education. And, you know, that was a departure from law enforcement. And I remember talking to my boss at the time who wanted to hire me. And I said, you know, Mike, I don't know anything about education. You know, I don't know anything about teaching. You know, I work in a world of murder and mayhem. That's what I need to get going in the morning. And he said to me at the time, you know, Mecca, I hire smart people and they can figure out the job. And I did figure out the job, because what I was in that role was an advocate, again, for underserved children who weren't getting what was appropriate for them, for professionals who were being discriminated against. You know, I was an advocate for the, and I remember these cases, for the young Black girl who had a teacher tell her one day that she reminded him of the gorilla from the old Samsonite commercials. I was an advocate for a young woman who had someone tell her one day that the only way she would get an A in class was on her knees. These were real cases. We had a kindergarten student once who during career day had someone tell him, because he was a young Muslim student, when he raised his hand and talked about how he wanted to be a scientist, how he would never be anything but a suicide bomber. So he wasn't going to have a future. So I got to be an advocate for them. I got to be the one who stands up and tells them this is not right, and we're going to hold people accountable for these types of infractions. And it was tremendously rewarding work, and eventually brought me to the governor's office, where I served as the chief diversity officer. And in that role, I got to be an advocate for something that I know Senator Serino is very passionate about, minority and women-owned businesses. These are small businesses. These are the lifeblood of community. And it was our obligation to make sure they got their fair share of contracts and fair share of opportunities to be competitive in an economic space. And so I got to do that work, which I was tremendously passionate about. And now I'm in healthcare, completely different realm again, where I'm working on issues of health equity, making sure everyone feels welcome, making sure that health disparities, which we know, especially at a time of COVID, are really more prevalent, making sure everyone has access and opportunities and the health care they deserve. Because here's the reality. You can't go to school if you're not healthy. You can't get a job if you're not healthy. You can't take care of a family if you're not healthy. You cannot participate in our process, in our society, if you are not healthy. It all starts with health. So I understand the importance of that and the importance of making sure people have what it is they need. And so if you look at my career trajectory, I have really gone through, criminal justice to education, to government, to healthcare, very different realms. And yet I've been able to have a tremendous amount of success through all of them. And it really is because I found my true north. I understood that in each space, I was an advocate for someone else, whether they were crime victims or children or businesses, or in this case, patients and communities, underserved communities. I've had a chance to do that because I understand and I'm guided by a position that says it's my job to make a contribution and help others. And it didn't matter. And if you can find this, it doesn't matter that the realm changes. You'll be fine. I heard it once said that a job is what you're paid for. A calling is what you're made for. And so I encourage people, find your calling. Don't find a job. Find what it is that is going to carry you through anything and through everything, right? The question of what are you made for and who you are, that's not a question about what your name is, about how much money you make, about how many fancy titles you have, about your level of education. It's a core question about who you are in this world and what is your contribution to this world. And when you can answer that and figure it out, what you do and where you do it becomes less important than who you are in your authentic self in whatever role or realm that you really find yourself in. And I think that is so important because, again, life will throw you what it throws you. And if you don't have some sense of self, some sense of true north to guide you and ground you, you really will find yourself reeling. And unfortunately, and it's still true, for women in particular, time is not your friend. Time, usually cuts against us in these circumstances. And so the ability to kind of figure some of this out early on will really, really serve you well. And it'll just lead to more fulfillment, more professional fulfillment. Because I have people who ask me all the time who knew me 20 years ago when I first started my career. And they're like, Mecca, how did this happen? How did you become this diversity person? You're a lawyer. Why aren't you practicing in courtrooms? And I tell them, no, a lawyer is a title I have. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend. I'm a volunteer. I'm a board member. A lawyer is my title. It's not who I am. What I am is an advocate. And that's more important than any title I can ever have. At the end of my days, when I sit and I think about the work that I've done and the people I helped, I won't be thinking about titles. I'll be thinking about my measure of contribution and how I was able to change the lives for others. And I've been blessed with success. And just like my fellow panelists, I think being blessed with success means you have an onus and an obligation to turn around and create success for others. And so any chance I can get to do that, I really take advantage of. And any chance I have to share my story, I want to do. I heard someone having a conversation with someone recently, and we were talking about people being able to envision themselves in different roles. Mecca, you're a senior, blah, 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 or you've attained this position. And I said, yeah, but you know what? I make it a point to always humanize myself, to make sure people can relate, to tell about my successes, my failures, my stumbles along the way, because I'm human just like everyone else is. And if people can't see themselves in you, they'll never see themselves as you. right? You can't mentor young people and try to tell them they can be anything if they can't see it, if that representation doesn't look and sound like them. And so by sharing these stories, what we're really doing is connecting. And we're saying, you know, wow, I can be a politician one day. I can be in Albany making a change. You know, I can be at a hospital. I can start my business and be an entrepreneur. I can be a dynamic person because I can see it. I've seen what it looks like. I've heard what it looks like. And you know what? It looks and sounds like me. And so that's what I want to share with the participants today, is that, again, being passionate, finding what that is that drives you, sharing your stories. That's true success for me, not just for yourself, but for others.
Just took me a second to unmute. See what I mean about Mecca? It's amazing, your background, Mecca, and everything. How fortunate we are to have you as an advocate, and you're just amazing. Thank you, my friend. And so now we have, I'm finally thrilled to introduce you to the woman who can teach us all how to make a real impact, CEO and founder of Impact PR and Communications, another friend of mine, Philomena Finelli. Thank you, Philomena, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me here, Sue. And thank you to Krista and to Mecca for sharing so openly, because you're sort of setting up what I'm about to talk about, which is seeing beyond who you are today. And you can't see beyond who you are today unless other people share with you the true story behind the person that they see. And I know each of you talked a little bit about who you were 5, 10, 20 years ago. And that's really powerful, because who we are in this moment might not be who we are 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, especially after we're transformed by something, even something difficult like a pandemic. And that's okay. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today, because back in 1998, I was nothing like the person all of you see on this Zoom call today. In fact, if you read my professional bio, I would look nothing like that woman. Back in 1998, I was Philomena the waitress. You may have seen me at Pizzeria Uno's in Poughkeepsie. Some of you may remember that place. And our Senator Sue Serino also was a waitress way back when, in the beginning of her career, before she became the people she was after that. Now, in order to become that waitress, I had to adapt. It sounds like a silly thing to say for like such an entry-level position, but before that, I had never ever waitressed a day in my life. I didn't want to be a waitress, wasn't my life plan. I fell in a hard time. I had been a top sales executive in New York City. I was selling computers on Madison Avenue. I had the power suit going and all. Things were going beautifully for me. I was making money. I was commuting on the train, and life was good professionally. However, and I'm glad Mecca shared a little bit about this too, on the personal side, things were not so beautiful. And I don't normally share about this. It's actually the first time I've shared very openly about it in such a public way. I was getting out of a domestic violence situation. And so here I was with a black eye, lost my job, had no car, had no income, had no idea how I was going to move myself forward. If I get a little choked up, it's because it's the real part of my story, the part people don't let you see normally. But there I was needing a job, and that was the only way I was going to find my path forward. But with no car, I had to find something I could walk to. So I found out that Pizzeria Uno was having these like open interviews, and I just needed a job. So I walked 3 miles in the pouring rain that day to Pizza Uno's, sat down with a manager who told me I was overqualified, but I think taking pity on my very bad hair day I must have been having at that moment, and maybe sensing my persistence and willing to do whatever, I was very much willing to do whatever, they gave me a chance. And a few months later, not only did I adapt, I actually embraced the life I was living. I sort of found the joys in being Philomena the waitress and having fun doing that. The only problem was I hadn't thought beyond that moment. I was very much living day by day, as somebody does when they go through a big change. Until someone, a friend of mine, just kind of casually asked me like, hey, Philomena, what is that thing that you did before you were a waitress? And I started talking about it and kind of getting excited. because I did like some of what I had been doing. And then they asked me a really important question. What are your dreams? And oh my gosh, nobody had asked me about my dreams in a very long time. And I don't even think I let myself ask about my dreams, but guess what, guys? Waitresses have dreams too. And it's very important to ask people about their dreams, because just the act of her asking me that question gave me the confidence to dream again. I got myself on a train, went to New York City, and landed my first job in PR. But I had no qualifications to really be working in PR. It was a passion. To Mecca's point, you have to have passion for what you're doing. I knew I wanted to be in communications. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And if you judged me by just my resume, what I had was an associate's degree in early childhood education from Dutchess Community College. Hopefully there's some Dutchess grads out there tonight. But I had just an associate's. I had some experience being a top-level salesperson, and I had the ability to sling pizzas and smile like nobody's business, which I tell you will get you pretty far in life anyway. Very important skill. So I start this entry-level job, and I will never forget being in the human resources office at this big deal company, Rubenstein Associates in New York City. And I'm there with the HR person. We're going to call her Jen to protect her identity. But Jen is the person that we refer to as the killer of dreams. Jen was the one who broke down to me that I was in a dead-end job. She mentioned to me that I was an administrative assistant, and my job was to do the 3 F's: file, phone, fax. Anybody here following with me that phone starts with a PH, not an F? But I nodded, I'm polite, so I go with her. And then Jen tells me that not included in my benefits package, like not part of the deal, is any kind of mentoring or advancement. This is a strictly non-promotable position. Are you still okay with this, Philomena? And at that point, I'm living on 1 bagel to make up 2 meals a day, because I'm like out on my own, but I'm fresh out of this kind of difficult situation. So I nod my head and smile. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this. But 10 months later, I proved Jen wrong. I got promoted. And I would like to think it's because I was such a hard worker and so smart, but there was more to it. I had been going into my job about 2 hours early every day without anybody asking me. I was commuting from Poughkeepsie to New York City, and I was still the first one in the office. I was reading about PR on my own, self-educating myself, because I didn't have the college degree or the credentials people next to me had, but I still wanted to learn. And I was doing my boss's work behind the scenes, not asking for credit, not wanting recognition, but just so I could actually learn the craft. And all those things happened, but I can't take the full credit, because there were 2 women, Kathleen and Catherine, who I owe a lot of credit to. They saw that this was going down, and on their own went to our boss and advocated for me. They didn't owe me anything. I was, you know, on the hierarchy, I was way beneath them, and they spoke out on my behalf, and I had that opportunity. 8.5 years later, I was a vice president at that agency and found my life's calling. So, you know, you want to know more Kathleens and Catherines, and you want to be a Kathleen and a Catherine. I got through that piece of it, had this great career, and then I also got kind of my personal life in order. I met a really wonderful man who I'm married to today, Michael, and we have 2 daughters together. But when we had our first daughter, I was at the tail end of my 20s. We were both commuting to the city from Poughkeepsie, and we didn't want to leave the Hudson Valley. We also didn't want to have a dual commuting family with a young baby in the house. So I abandoned that career and said, oh, I guess I'm not going to be in PR anymore, because 14, 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of PR opportunities in our community, and certainly not ones with flexibility that were like family friendly or with flexible schedules or remote work policies. That was not a thing. But I sort of took a leap of faith, and I was like, all right, now I am Philomena, the stay-at-home mom, and the former, you know, person with the view of New York City from her office and the assistant. Like, that's another chapter. That's not me anymore. But luckily, I had another woman call me. It was about 1.5 years into being a stay-at-home mom, and it was a friend of mine from the city. She's a minority business owner, and she's awesome, and her name is Jennifer. And way ahead of her time, she said, Philomena, I know how talented you are. Would you consider working for me from your house around your daughter's childcare schedule? And I said, yes. And that was a game changer for me. And if it hadn't been for that, I might not have started the business I did a little more than six years ago. Because of Jennifer, I got the courage to continue in the career I loved, to work on my skills, and to do something else that is advice to everyone on this call today who's maybe in a job you don't love, or maybe you need to make a change, things aren't secure where you are. I started volunteering my time with local not-for-profits, doing the thing that I do that I love, a little bit here and there for them as a favor. And that made me have kind of a network that I hadn't had previously because I had been working in the city. It boosted my confidence, and it gave me the courage to start charging people for what I do and to create what is now a certified women business enterprise, 6 women strong, with like the rack of awards and all that fun stuff. But that's not why we do what we do, but it's nice. We work with big companies like Angry Orchard and Astor Services for Children and Families, and Tompkins Mahopac Bank, Baxter Construction, Eleanor Roosevelt Center at Valkill. I could go on and on. That's not what it's about, but we were able to create something good because all of these people had opened the doors for me. And I, in turn, saw that as an obligation to do the same for others, to create that kind of opportunity for them. And by doing so, we're allowed to live our life on the term that we need to. And this is not just women, this is men too. We wear many hats. You do have to be that professional, that parent, that partner, that friend, that family member, that volunteer in the community. Those things were all important to me, and I think they should be important and rights, in fact, for all of us. And here we are today. We're obviously in a world that none of us expected, the pandemic, the economy, the divided world we're in. Things aren't always gonna be what we want. And there's a lot of people out there who are quick to tell you what can't be, what's going to be tough, what might not materialize. When I started my business, all of those well-meaning folks, many of them speaking their own fears, and Krista brought up a good point, what you let out of your mouth really has an effect on others. So, you know, there are people who, you know, project their own fears out into the world and tell you what can't be, but if you can steer toward the people who know what is possible, the people who believe in you, the people who will advocate for you, good things can happen even in spite of those obstacles. If we can improvise, adapt, and overcome, I didn't invent that, the Marines did, we will get there. And for me, it didn't matter if I was walking out the front door with a black eye and nothing but my clothes on. It didn't matter that I heard you're just a waitress. It didn't matter that Jen in HR told me I was gonna be an assistant. And it didn't matter that people told me, Phil, you're crazy starting a business with a not even 3- and 8-year-old underfoot, a husband who works the night shift and no working capital. So what? We all have to start somewhere. We all need to see beyond who we are today. And there are 3 things that will help us be there, 3 people we need to be. We need to be the person who asks others about their dreams and talks about ours. We need to be Kathleen or Catherine. We need to be the person who spots talent, spots people out there hustling. Maybe they don't even have the pretty credentials. Maybe they have an associate's degree or a GED, but they're doing the hard work. We need to call those things out and speak truth to that. And we need to be the person who says what is possible. The business owner who opens up doors, creates new ideas, and tells other people, you should go for that. I'll help you. Here are some things that helped me when I started off my business. Here are some things you may want to consider. How can I help you? Be those 3 people and the world's going to be a better place, even in the midst of uncertainty. And last but not least, my husband's deceased grandfather used to have this saying, and I loved it. He used to say, you can't fly like an eagle if you're surrounded by turkeys. And what I love about that, right? Like eagles are very majestic creatures. They fly the skies, and in the skies, there are always clouds. Right now, that cloud might be the pandemic or the economy. The clouds are always going to be there. Do you think eagles fly looking at the clouds? No. They see the clouds, but they're looking at the blue sky ahead. They're looking to where they can head next. They also have the most keen vision ever, and that's what we need to survive this. We need to have eagle eyes to spot the tiny opportunities others might miss. And if we can do those things, if we can be the kind of people, men or women, who can do those great things I just talked about, I think we will actually get through this in one piece and together. And thank you for allowing me to share a bit of my heart with you all today.
Sorry, just unmuting again. Philomena, thank you so much. And that's something else we have in common. You know, I worked for the Bantas for years. When my first marriage fell apart, my son was an infant. So I didn't realize that with you too. And thank you everybody, Mecca, for sharing your story, and Krista, my friend. You know, what this really makes us stronger, our histories. And it's great because so many women can hear our stories today and be empowered. Women, and like you said, Philomena, women and men, because we actually do have men on today too. And it's been great. I can't thank everybody enough. And then if people want to ask questions, they just have to write in the question and answer box. They'll see it on their screen. Now, did we get a question yet? Okay, let's see. Okay, here's a question, and whoever would like to answer it says, how do you recommend finding a mentor, is one of the first questions, which is a great question. Who would like to answer?
I can actually start on that one just because I talked a little bit about some mentors of mine and I've been blessed. I mentioned 3 of them to you, but there were many others along the way, including some of our male allies out there. And I always do include the men in because men deserve mentors too. Women deserve mentors, young people, older people re-entering the workforce. We all can learn from each other. And one of the ways I've found my mentors is to ask questions, to humble myself, to admit what I don't know, and to turn around and offer what I do know. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship, a good mentorship. And sometimes it's like the young person in the office who shows me an Instagram trick. I'm very grateful to them and I'm willing to show them my little tricks. That might not be my trick, maybe it is now, but maybe it wasn't once. And so we can all learn from the people who seem less skilled than us. They have blessings to share, and if we can like reciprocate and give them what we have, or also look up and ask people who are more experienced. Some of you have experiences I've never had that I'd love to talk to you about. Just ask questions and be humble, and don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself.
That's great. And then another question is, any advice for expecting moms with a vision?
So I'll try to tackle this one. I think, again, you know, and I think we got a lot of moms participating today. Like I said, I have an 18-year-old and a now 12-year-old. You know, I think your first fidelity, and not that we don't all love and adore our children, not all the time when they drive us crazy, but in general. But I think your primary fidelity is to yourself too. You know, we spend so much time giving up who we are, we give up our time, we give up ourselves, we give up our own dreams and our hopes and aspirations because we think that's what we're expected to do. And we almost end up feeling guilty about it, right? I tell people, I embraced the idea that I was going to be unapologetically ambitious, meaning that I'm not going to apologize for the fact that sometimes my kids get a home cooked meal, and you know what? Sometimes pizza is just fine. Sometimes I can make every recital and every basketball game, and sometimes I can't because I'm traveling for work. You know, and that's okay. Life will go on. The kids will be resilient. So I think, you know, balance and integration. I don't like the idea of work-life balance because you're never going to get balance. Balance implies that there's equality in this perfect dance that we can do. It's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be messy. You're always going to be feeling like a bad mom, a bad wife, a bad worker, a bad daughter. It happens. You have to become kind of settled and reconcile within yourself that simply because you've taken on this new role and you're expecting a child in the family, that you have to sacrifice who you are and what your dreams are. Hold fast to that. It just means that how it plays out may differ, right? But it doesn't mean that you've been derailed. Your journey now is going to be different. That's it. But your journey is still your journey. And you never want to, and we've seen it happen again, especially with women, where they feel that I've got to make this sacrifice, and I seem to never be able to get back on track. If you stay focused, you have your true north, staying on track is exactly what you'll do. And starting a family will be part of that process. It won't be the end of that process.
And Mecca, thank you. But somebody asked you this question specifically. Do you have any tips for advocating in the medical field?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. In the medical field in particular, but I've worked in so many spaces where I tell people your work matters, right? So working in the medical field, you not caring, you not being engaged, you looking at this work as just a paycheck. There are people's lives at stake. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with people's parents, people's children. The work is too important for you to get it wrong. And so you're not just showing up punching a clock. I don't care if you're the person who sanitizes the operating room. If you don't, people die. That's how serious your work is. You know, so whether you're the surgeon or the sanitation worker, you are part of this space that is so incredibly important to people. And so the advocacy is natural for me because I see that as my calling. And you see the devastating impact of people whose health needs are not being met for whatever reason, a whole host of reasons. But you see how that limits life and it limits opportunities for so many of them. And I can tell you, you know, healthcare is one of those spaces. It is so mammoth in size and scope. And there are so many opportunities for good people to make a contribution. If you feel like you want to come in and make a difference, you can find that space in healthcare.
That's great. Well, we're having a lot of questions coming in. Another one is, in a time of such uncertainty, how do you promote yourself and what dreams do you have moving forward? Who wants to take that? Krista. Okay, we're gonna just unmute you, Krista. Oops, hold on one second. Oh, yeah. No, there we go.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
You know, promoting yourself, I think, has a lot to do. It was really interesting to listen to both Mecca and Philomena. It really has a lot to do with your authentic self, right? In the middle of crisis, in the middle of change, in the middle of all of this that is going on, promoting yourself now is really from within. It really is, you know, it really is stories. And, you know, even with the charity right now, it's not as much about asking as it is about telling. So for us, promoting ourselves is more about what are we doing in the middle of this and how are we getting through this and how are we keeping our patients safe? And I think promoting yourself and your business during this is, how are you thinking about others during this time? How is that all projecting forward? You know, so many times it's just an inner thing and it's a selfish thing. And I think especially in the middle of crisis or in the middle of change, it's really important that people see when you're promoting yourself, what are you really doing to help others? How are you looking outward? That's what I would say.
And that's something that we all do. You know, no matter what we're doing, each one of us here are advocating for other people. And I know, like for me, I absolutely love helping people, just like you guys too. Mm-hmm. There's another question that said, for those who started their own business, how did you start? How did you start these businesses with no capital, and how did you stay afloat? That's a good question. Philomena?
I'd be happy to take this one because I feel like we're kind of going around the world. So yeah, I started off at my kitchen table, 2 young kids. I had a little bit of freelance work, and what I did is I saved the money for 3 months, just paid my expenses that I had to pay. And critical to me was, and this is a really hard thing to hear, especially at a time like this, but having the confidence to really invest and believe in yourself. So when I made money, I initially put it all back in the business. I just expected to pay my bare minimum bills and put everything into the business initially. And in spite of that, we were actually profitable the first year and every year since. I don't know if this year that'll happen. Thank you, pandemic. But it does start with, I think you can't expect other people to believe in your business or vision if you don't even really believe it in yourself. If you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, why would someone else spend their money with you? So it was very scary, but I hired a professional local designer to do my website. I did not want to do that myself. I hired a professional to do my photos from our community. It is scary, I won't lie, to take that, sort of roll that dice on yourself, but I figured if I can't bet on me, who can I bet on? And I will still bet on myself. Like, I may seem like a fool, like I was with you, Chris. It's been a brutal year, but I'm continuing to bet on myself and make those adjustments. We went to a virtual office model and we're staying there permanently for the time being. I don't foresee opening an office back up right now because I need to consider my employees and their safety. And I still need to put other investments back into the business. So I'm just, you know, continuing to invest back in, as hard as that is. So invest in yourself is my bottom line.
And Philomena, here's a really nice comment for you too. Kathleen, your mentor, thank you for all your support and your encouragement. That's so nice.
Oh my gosh, she wasn't going to be able to make it. So I'm like really moved that she's on here. She's the absolute best. And she started her own business recently. So like, round of applause for her, because it is much harder than it looks. And I commend anyone who goes that route.
But isn't it interesting how like we do things that, for me, my first husband and I had split up. My son was an infant, and I said, "Oh my goodness, what do I do?" I was waitressing and managing a restaurant, but I said I want to be home with my son during the day, so I opened a daycare. You know, so like you think about different things that you can do, and that worked well for me.
Hopefully everyone who hears this will be extra nice to their waitress, because you never know who your waitress is going to be tomorrow.
That's so true.
Tip them well.
Here's another question, because Mecca had talked about this. How do you find your true north? Are there any tools or resources?
Well, I think one of the, and again, for me, it was more that as my career kept going, I just kept realizing I've got a common, this common theme or this common thread that was present about just wanting to help people. And I think some of it is through experience, right? You can try a couple of different things, but you always come back to asking yourself the question, why? Why am I doing this? What is it about getting up and going to do this every day that inspires me? And if you can't answer that question, that's not where you should be. And the why can be, you know, again, I like helping people. I want to make a difference. I want to make a contribution. Whatever that is, I think you have to figure that out. And it's not easy, because we really work in a society where the expectation, at least used to be, you know, you get a job, you work, you get a paycheck, and that's the totality of what it is. We don't care about you bringing your whole self to work, as long as you bring enough of yourself that you can get the job done. And so I think that has started to change, and people really are looking for that connection, because you spend so much time at work. But in order to be connected genuinely, authentically, you have to have a connection to the job, and it can't be a pension and a paycheck. It has to be something else. So I think it requires us to do what is often difficult, but actually during this time might work for some people, which is take the time and reflect. Those people who are either out of work or they've been upended by what's going on, very rarely in life do we have an opportunity to pull back and to disconnect and literally reflect, what am I doing? Is this what I want to be doing? And if not, what is it I truly am passionate about? If I could do anything in the world, I would do X, and I would do it because of Y. If you can start answering those questions, that's how you get to your true north.
And that's so true. This is a great question, because I picture myself. It says, what advice do you have for older women competing in a workforce with a younger generation? That's a great question. I don't know who wants to take that one. I could tell you, like, I sell real estate. You could be any age selling real estate. I have women right now that are in their, actually they're in their 80s, and I can say that because they're very proud of it, and they've done it all their life. So, you know, I guess it all depends on what somebody wants to do too. Do you guys, does anybody have any other advice? Because I could see where that, you know, can be an issue, right?
It can be, because, you know, especially nowadays with all of the new software and the social media, you know, there is an age group that feels a little bit lost with all of that. You know, what we have encouraged our own employees to do at any age that they are is, now that we do have a little time, right? We have some more time at home. I know that Philomena was saying that, you know, they're doing a lot of virtual and at-home things as well, and our employees too, to keep them safe. We have some of them home, you know, and Mecca said as well, it is the time to look into things. There are, if you're in a chamber of commerce, there are plenty of different websites that you can go to brush up on some skills, because I understand that it's frustrating. There are a lot of things in the workplace that they're looking for that younger adults really have, you know, a better handle than we do on, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn it. And especially now with all of these free and virtual workshops that are taking place, you know, as somebody that is older and maybe feeling a little timid getting back into the workforce or competing against, you know, a younger generation, you know, I would just say to you, don't be frightened by it. Take some of these free workshops. You really can learn a lot, you know, and there's a lot of tutorials that you do as the workshop is going on. And I've actually, I hate to admit this, but I'm not really good at Excel. And I should be. I mean, you know, I'm in my 40s, like I should know Excel. I don't know Excel. I make everybody else do Excel. And really, when we had this break, I know, Mecca's like, are you kidding? But when we had this break, I went on and took some classes, some free classes the college had to offer, just so I could learn, like, how do I sum up my totals? Things that you would think I would need to know, you know, and you just get too embarrassed to ask. And honestly, the classes saved my life. So there's a lot of free workshops out there, and I would just don't get discouraged, and don't let your age, you know, have anything to do with knocking you down.
I still haven't mastered Excel, and
Thank goodness.
So I'm happy you did, Krista.
I'll teach you what I learned.
How do you get past beliefs about yourself that limit you from moving forward, like to gain confidence? That's a good question too, especially when you go through tough times and you kind of feel down, right?
You know, I think, again, the common theme for some of us has been divorce, and I'm recently married again, so it all can work out. But I'll share candidly, you know, years ago when my divorce was first happening, and I was very sad and depressed and everything else, and I went to Barnes and Noble, and I went to the self-help aisle. This is a true story. And I was just like looking at all these books, and I reached out and I just touched this one book and I pulled it out, and it was called The Book of Awakenings. And I opened it up just to a random page, and it was all about this story about an older monk teaching a younger monk about life and happiness. And the older monk took a glass of water, and he put a handful of salt in it, and he gave it to the young monk, and he said, drink. And the young monk did, and he spit it out, and he said, you know, I can't drink it. It's bitter, it's salty, it upsets my stomach. And the older monk said, now come with me to a nearby lake. And they went to a lake, and the older monk took another same handful of salt and threw it in the lake. And he told the young monk, now drink from the lake. And the young monk did, and he said, it's refreshing, it's wonderful. And the older monk said, you know, and here is the key to life and happiness. Don't be the glass, be the lake. There's always going to be the salt, right? The salt didn't change. The salt was in a glass, the salt was in a lake. The salt is the negativity, it's the haters, it's the pain, it's the divorce you didn't see coming, it's the loss of a job. The salt will always be there. Your job is to make yourself bigger, because the bigger you are, the more you surround yourself with people and places and things that make you feel worthy and make you feel strong. The more you make yourself big, the less the salt impacts you. And so when I struggle, which I still do to this day sometimes, with insecurities and doubt, I literally say, you know what, Mec, don't be the glass, be the lake.
I really like that a lot. That's great. Here's another question. What tips do you have for coping when you're feeling overwhelmed with ever-changing information? And that's true, things are changing so fast. Who wants to answer that question?
I can. Philomena, I don't know if you, it's very overwhelming. I will say that in my realm, it changes from day to day with the health department. You know, it's things like COVID-19 is living on surfaces. COVID-19 is not living on surfaces. COVID-19 is living in the air. You have to wear a mask. You shouldn't wear a mask. You have to make sure that your drivers are all checked for fevers. You can't have more than a blank amount of people in a room. Yes, you can, but if they have a mask. So, there is a lot of information that comes out there that really can overwhelm you. But I would say focus, right? You just have to kind of take the noise and you have to kind of put it to the side, and you really just have to focus, and you have to be fluid. You have to be ready to change your sail north or south or wherever you need to go, because especially with something like the pandemic, we are listening to experts that are switching things around, or, from day to day, and then are expecting us to follow through with that. So I would say you just listen to the information, and I would keep calm about it. And I would, we're journaling here. So every day we'll get information, and then we'll say, all right, now what do we do different in order for us to meet this? And what do we do? And we keep our notes, because, then sometimes, somebody will go back to something that they said before. So we are just in constant communication here as a staff, so that we can figure out what information we're being given, and then how to best execute that. As I said before, just as the leader of this group, it's really important that I just handle that as calmly as I can, that I keep it as black and white as I can, so that my employees also have a sense of peace. Because, right, when you're just given a million different things and you're overwhelmed, you lose your peace. And if you lose your peace, you lose your focus. So I would say focus, get yourself some peace. It is going to change from day to day, but you have to be fluid in times like this so that you can change right along with it.
I would actually add to what you said about being fluid and being flexible. For me, fresh air and friends have also been key to sort of focusing on what I can manage and what's within my realm of control versus what isn't. Like, here's what I know for today. And that's an honest answer. And then my biggest tool is to self-manage. So I've been running more and walking more during the pandemic. And I feel like even doing so puts things back into perspective and reminds me of what's within my control and not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so true. When everybody was quarantined, I just want to add that, because what made you just reminded me of something. Like my mom and my mother-in-law, we teased them because we said they were grounded, right? Because we were so afraid about them going out. But at the same time, I also encouraged my mother to get in her car and drive. Go out, see things, don't just stay inside, your four walls. It's really important, and it does give you a different perspective. Somebody had another question, because we have time for two more, but one of the questions was, how do we encourage women to take more risks? And that would be men too. Like, how do we encourage you to, I guess, probably feel the courage, right? Especially when you're just starting out, like, and all of us have been through our challenges and did something new, and it can be hard, but we took the jump, right? I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that, to give somebody advice.
I think, as you said, it's always scary. I mean, Sue, you're the prime example, right? You took many jumps along the way. I jumped completely in different directions professionally, and I think that's what we've heard from everyone. I think the risk in taking the risk is somewhat minimized. Again, if you do things like find your real passion and your calling, but also prepare yourself, right? So it's purpose, passion, and a plan. So if you prepare yourself, and that can be through education or experience, because again, it's not just education that helps people. It's going, when we had a time of in-person networking events and meeting and greeting and understanding the different types of work in different professional realms and building up skill sets. For many of us, in case you can't tell, public speaking is a skill set. And if you know that that's something that might be good to have in your toolkit, then take a public speaking class. It's all about that, because when you do so, then you're not as worried about taking the risk. When you do so, it gives you a certain amount of freedom to say, you know what, I'm a talented person. I can find a job. I can find someone who will have use for my talents. And more importantly, they should be lucky to have someone like me to contribute to their organization. It gives you a sense of confidence and knowing that this part, your professional life, to a certain extent is on your own terms, because the fear of risk comes when you are ill prepared, when you don't have what you need to be able to say, I'll be okay. So I would say that build skills, build passion, purpose, have a plan, and take the risk.
And I'd say there's always going to be some level of fear, right? Like we fight through fear, but fear is normal. I had fear before I got on this call today, and people will say, oh, you were just great. I always have fear. I fight through that fear. And the way that I do that, and it's worked for me, I don't know if it works for any of you, I like to look back at my playbook. Even the exercise of talking before all of you forced me to reckon with my own story, the pieces I shoved down that are part of my history of fighting through something and battling it and overcoming it. So that, and I agree with Mecca, educate yourself. I love colleges and institutions. I'm a huge fan. I hope my children go that path and don't have to tough it out the way I did. But self-education is a thing too. I belong to a business book club. We were meeting virtually during the pandemic. Now we meet distance. Continue to work on you and to get the skills you don't have and to talk to people smarter than you. And you'll be less afraid to take risks when you see really cool people you admire doing the things you're afraid to do.
And I think too, just piggybacking off of both of you, sometimes you're going to take a risk and sometimes it's not going to work. And I think you need to say to yourself, what is the worst thing that happens out of that? Maybe it just tweaks what you're doing again. You know, I took a risk with a charity. Let me tell you, I filled out all that paperwork, Sue. We should talk about the IRS, that 25-page thing. They rejected me, completely rejected me in 2011, said no. I had people saying this is a dumb idea. It's never going to work. You know, so I also have taken risk and they haven't really worked, but somehow if it's your passion, Mecca has like kept honing in on that too. If this is like the drive, you know, then you know it's your truth. Spiritually for me, I'm very spiritual and, you know, I look there a lot when I'm taking risks, but I'm kind of like, if it's meant to be, it is going to work out. It may not work the way that I thought it was going to work out, but you know, I take a risk. That doesn't mean that I failed because it didn't work out that way. It might mean it's not the time. It might mean it's not the way. It just means I might have to reevaluate it and then try it again.
Yeah, that's true. You know, and I'm somebody, I always hated public speaking. I was just somebody that, and even still to this day, I love to listen to people because I feel like I learn something new every single day. But, you know, now because I speak from the heart, and I love what I do. It's so much easier for me, right? And Philomena, right? Like telling your story today, which you haven't done, but it's from the heart, you know, which is, it's just always so amazing and impressive. So here we're going to ask, there's two more things here because then I know we're going to have to wrap it up. But first, it's how do you suggest women to continue to build their networks moving forward? And then there's a question for Krista. How have you dealt with virtual fundraising? So whoever wants to answer.
I think for the networking, you know, and again, it's a little difficult now because of the state that we're in. And so, but when either when things return to normal or we'll figure out a new way to do it, I think it's getting out there and exposing yourself. When given the opportunity to be in a big room with lots of people or at an event, take that and seize that moment, not just to socialize personally, but to network professionally, to get a business card. Always have your card is one thing I used to tell people, because you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to go up and start a conversation. You have to be willing to have your pitch about you and talk about you in a way and talk about what you're passionate about in a way that makes you memorable. And I think so much of that professional networking, women need to seize more of those advantages, because that's where, and people will tell you, a lot of the real deals get done. That's where a lot of the real work gets done. You know, they've done studies professionally. Very little, a small amount of people end up where they are based purely on merit or like submitting a resume. You know how they get there? Because they knew someone. And it doesn't mean they're not qualified, but they knew someone who could put their resume in front of the right person. So networking is such a powerful tool for women. And again, I think like everything else, it's a skill you hone and you put yourself out there because you understand how it'll benefit you.
Becca, I'm going to build upon what you said just the tiniest bit, because I saw somebody do something really cool today around this women's networking event. Somebody by the name of Sheila, here on my LinkedIn. Hello, Sheila, if you're still listening, reached out to say, hey, I saw you were talking tonight and I wanted to connect with you. Like, so just because we can't be in the room together doesn't mean you can't reach out to someone. And that's the social media allows us to have that initial connection. But that's just a start. We still have to form real and authentic relationships. So it's more than gathering the card. It's more than linking in or Facebook friending someone. It's actually more about how you can help them than about what you can get from them. So I'm always happy to go out of my way if somebody needs a referral, has an electrical question, wants to know about fig trees and my husband grows them. Like I'm at their disposal. It really doesn't matter what the topic is. I either feel like I'll know something, or I'll know someone I can connect them to. And just by virtue of doing that, your world becomes bigger and bigger and you become that big body of water, to Mecca's point, because it's not just your resources or what you know or what you want, but what you have to offer through all of you're kind of sharing your wealth.
And Philomena, just quickly to add on to your point again, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to share if you just ask. You know what I mean? We take this position that, oh, she's too busy, she wouldn't, you know, she's not going to respond. What's the worst that can happen? What you just heard Krista say, what's the worst that can happen?
I once created an internship opportunity for someone. I don't have one right now, just like throwing it out there. But I once, when business was like booming, I actually created a position I didn't even need because someone was so authentic and like reaching out and wrote these nights. And I just wanted to open a door for her. And I was like, you know what, come in here a few days a week. And it was the way she reached out. She sort of put her heart out there and she didn't do it in a weird, creepy stalker-like way. It was really appreciated. And she was a former student from when I was an adjunct at Marist, Cassandra. I don't know if you're listening out there, but Cassandra's a brilliant young lady now working in the city, but she had the chutzpah to just ask. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd be amazed how many people don't ask.
And you know, what's interesting too, like here in the Senate office, we've had 46 or 47 interns so far. And today I actually met an intern when I broke my ankle. I didn't have the opportunity to see her at the office because I had to stay home. I couldn't walk, but it was just nice to meet her today, Emily, if she's watching with her mom, Desiree. And Krista, so the last question was for you about how you have dealt with virtual fundraising.
Oh, goodness. Well, going back to the woman that said, how do you deal with, you know, everything when you're an older person in the workplace? You don't really have to be older to not really know all of this techie software stuff. So COVID was like a real learning experience for me. I learned what my lane is that I should stay in. I also learned what, you know, I need to work on. So we really had to revamp everything. We did our run virtually. We are doing our gala virtually. We have researched a few software companies with texting to give, you know, and really what we're doing is we're telling the story of recipients, because right now they're speaking volumes. You know, you and I are afraid to go out, or at least we were at the very beginning. I know Sue and I even had some conversations like, where would you go grocery shopping? Like, you know, but you know, if you have a compromised immune system, you live that life every day. Now you throw COVID on top of it. So really one of the ways that we are also fundraising is we are telling the stories of the people that we help, because that is something that everybody wants to know and everybody can relate to. So, you know, you give your mission an actual face, which is very important, and you let them see actually where their dollars are going and how they're helping, and you let that person tell their story. And you know, that really is really what it's all about. So virtually we're just doing as many events as we can online. you know, we assume people are going to get a little tired of that. Philomena, you might even be able to speak to that point, just being in this, right? But, you know, I think it's going to be our future for a while. So I'm still learning myself. And, you know, whoever asked that question, if they're in a charity world and they want to reach out to me, I absolutely encourage it. I didn't have anybody when I started the charity. I didn't know how to fill out paperwork. I didn't know what a board of directors was. Like, I knew nothing, and I had to kind of learn it all by myself. So I would love to be able to take that knowledge and give it to anybody that wants it, because I wish I had that. So when I hear all of you talking about these wonderful mentors in your life, I just didn't have it. I just didn't know anybody in that field. So I had to kind of figure it out myself. But anybody out there who, you know, has any questions like that, you can absolutely reach out to me. I'll give you cell phone, whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
That's great. And so I just want to thank Krista, Mecca, Philomena. Thank you so much. Listening to your stories, you are all amazing. I've had people texting me while we were on today and just saying, this is just so great. They feel so inspired and empowered, which is awesome. And I also want to give a huge shout out to all their healthcare providers, right? Look at all the people that were on the front lines. Yeah.
Every day.
Yes, for really saving so many lives and helping us, and it's just been simply amazing. And thank you doesn't seem like enough. It's two little words, but you know, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And thank you, ladies, for doing this with me today. It was so inspiring. You guys make me feel so great, and I know you all love what each and every one of you do too. So.
And we just want to say, you know, just to you, you know, you're doing amazing. We're all watching your story. I think most people that are listening right now know your story and your recent diagnosis. And you're just in our prayers, and you're in our heart. And, you know, we love you. And, you know, anything that any of us can do on our ends, you know, we'll do it happily.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Sue, you are the embodiment of intelligence and strength and resilience. And again, the fact that with everything else, you've taken time to create this space and create this opportunity speaks volumes about what your investment is in the community, in other people. And so for that, I am proud to call you a friend. I am proud to know that you are representing the interests that are so important to so many of us. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys. This has been great.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you, Philomena. Thank you, guys. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.